VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are here on our now traditional late night program. We got OTAs the rest of the month, and then Vikings mandatory minicamp in about 2 weeks. Tonight we're here with John. He's a Vikings fan in St. Paul. John, welcome to the show. First time. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I like the late night recordings. They work out.
Yeah, you might not think on a surface level that for a family man that those work, but they oddly do because the house tends to get a little bit quiet.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right on. All
Sometimes.
right, so I got about four. Brev and I got about 4 Vikings questions for you. We'll launch into those. Brev, how are you doing this fine weekend?
Pretty good. Saturday night, I took a nap, so I'm well rested. So I'm ready to go.
And the nap conveniently did not happen on top of the program this time.
Yeah,
So
this time, yeah.
we are cooking with gas.
Yeah.
All right, John, we had a schedule release Wednesday night. It is a third place schedule as sold to us. But you look at it and you're kind of like, yeah, this doesn't look like third place shit to me. Mainly because you're playing Aaron Rodgers, Jets, and then you're playing, let's see, who is the other substitute? You got the Giants, which is kind of meh, and then I think you got the Falcons out of the deal because they finished in third, and now they have Kirko. So I want to know, what is the game you're most looking forward to now that you've had about 3 or 4 days with the schedule?
I'm looking at week 6 at home, or game 6 at home against the Lions, coming off the bye. I think I think the chess match between Flores and Ben Johnson, with Flores with a little better personnel at his disposal, should be interesting. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, the Lions and their fan base and their team, anytime I remember being a fan, have been extremely annoying, and it's kind of turned it into a little bit more of a rivalry than I think it ever has been. And dropping both of them last year, and then it'll kind of set us up. We've got them week 18 again, so it's kind of setting the tone at home against the Lions could be huge. And coming off of a bye, we might be able to throw some stuff at them. So.
Yeah, I agree on week 7 at US Bank Stadium against the Lions. I asked a similar question to some of the guys and gals that write at Vikings territory, and my good friend Wes Johnson identified this very game as one that he's circled. But the reason is pretty cool. He, in his estimation, this could be a natural pivot point to J.J. McCarthy if things have gone poorly, or maybe even if they're going fine.
Yep.
And then TJ Hawkinson, in theory, if he got off the PUP list, that would be a game to circle where you could have McCarthy and Hawkinson coming back, and who knows what the record will be in time at that point. When you look at the first 6 games or so, you're kind of hoping for 2 and 4 at the best, because it's murderer's road. Do you disagree with any of those takes, John?
Not really, no. And yeah, it'd be awesome if that was the McCarthy game too. That would add a little bit more to it. But I think regardless, and we'll talk a little McCarthy, I'm sure, as we get into this. But I think regardless of who's under center, is it's just going to be game 1 against the Lions. Just going to be huge if we can get that win at home, and then we've got a super pivotal week 18 matchup against them to have that win in our back pocket, and probably have tiebreaker at that point. It'll kind of be ball in their court. So yeah, I mean, and like I said, dude, the Lions have been. I'm on Twitter too much, which is a problem, but Lions and their fan base have been pretty tough to handle over the last year and a half.
Yeah, I've been a fan for about 30 years now of the Vikings, and the Lions have been good about 3 or 4 times, but the caveat is they've never been this good. They've never reached the NFC Championship on my watch, so to speak. And so the other couple times it felt fluky with Stafford, and they never scared me really. But now they're pretty good, and therefore their fans are a little loud and boisterous. Brevin, it's your turn. What do you want to know from John from St. Paul?
Yeah, so in years past, I guess in the Kirk Cousins era, and even a couple years before that, like, the going into the season around this time of the off season, it's always kind of been like, all right, the season is about, and especially with Kirk, let's win now, let's make a run now. They make moves to where it's evident that they think they can win now. I think there's definitely an argument this is going to be more of a transition year and less of a win now type season. But what do you think would make 2024 a successful season? Do you kind of still subscribe to that win now, or do you think it's more about like kind of development for the young players?
I think there's always going to be an air of, like in the building and within a lot of the fan base to be competitive, kind of as a bare minimum. But for me, if I were to try to quantify it on a whole team scale, I think if you're above 500 this year and you're feisty, miss the playoffs at 9-8, crack a wild card at 10-7, I think that's awesome. Even 8-9 if it's competitive, as long as we're right around 500 and it's not 4 or 5 wins, I think that's huge. But out of the season, if we can get 8+ games of McCarthy under center, just of experience for him, whether that's out of necessity or just saying, hey Sam, we're gonna give JJ a shot. I think that would be great, just rolling into next year. If you've got some significant regular season game experience for him, that's one of the main things. And if we could have an average running offense, that would be huge for me personally. So those are the kind of the 3 things that came to mind for me. Is getting McCarthy in the mix, be acceptable as a rushing offense, and hopefully be feisty, be around 500, maybe crack a wild card. But it's much less playoffs or bust than it was with Kirk, for sure, I think.
Does any part of you subscribe to like maybe 4 or 5 wins this year could be a good thing? Like hopefully not, because McCarthy sucks and he's obviously not the guy, but if they roll with Darnold and McCarthy just doesn't come in until like late, is there any part of you that thinks maybe like, because if they get 10 wins, make a wild card run, why not us? But at a certain point, like you kind of know nothing's going to come of it. Is there anything in you that would be okay with winning only 4 or 5 games and getting that high draft pick? I guess it's kind of loser mentality, but silver lining.
Yeah. Well, we hung on to that 25 first, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a different conversation, but no, yeah, I've never, and even through the Kirk years and prior, I've always been just, hey, I want to watch my favorite team 17 times, and I'd like them to win as many of those as possible. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
and even just in the context of like trajectory of the team, that could get us a better draft spot, and build the team moving forward. But I think with the guys you have in the building right now, like a relatively successful season, as far as wins goes, is probably going to do more to kind of build upon the culture we have, and it probably will help the team moving forward a little bit more.
The thing that I think we have going for us, if we don't want 4-13 or 5-12, is I can guarantee you that Kevin O'Connell, the coaching staff, isn't saying to the locker room, guys, this is a flyover season. We're just trying to get to 2025. Do your best. No, they're going to go into it like they do every year, because that's the kind of coach every NFL coach really is, and especially O'Connell. So we, on shows like this, or on Vikings Twitter, we can admit that 7-10, 8-9 will be fine and dandy. But the way their mentality will be in the locker room is going to be like, what are you talking about? We're going to go win a Super Bowl. So that is applicable to your, I like watching my team win football games 17 times per year, or at least have the opportunity to. So I think they'll surprise some folks. And like you said, John, be feisty. All right, let's do some roster maintenance here, sir. We're getting to the hot spot on the calendar that after mini camp in a couple weeks, it'll kind of be the dead zone. So we start analyzing every ounce of the roster. I want you to name 3 of the most underrated players on the current Vikings roster.
So I think there's kind of 2 ways to look at this. There's like from a national perspective, but I think with us and probably a lot of your viewer base, it's more in the context of like how they're viewed by Vikings fans.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, one of the guys I wanted to mention is Garrett Bradbury.
Yeah.
I think he's just good, average to good. And I think when, I think there's a pretty big section of the fan base that thinks he's terrible. Like I see a lot of takes like that, and it's just not the case. Like he's a valuable member of the offense, especially with JJ and Sam, who are going to be taking snaps as opposed to Kirk. And Kirk, they've said that he could always essentially override Bradbury's protection calls and check out of them. But Bradbury's the one setting the protections at the line. He's at this point a veteran presence and a leader, and he's really, really good at some things. He's great out in space. He's great movement skills for his size, screen game, zone runs, that kind of thing. Yeah, he doesn't have the anchor of some bigger guys and can get knocked off his spot, and that stuff like really jumps out at you on the screen. But I think there's a lot of things that he does that go really, really undervalued, particularly by the fan base. So that's one. And another one I think in a similar vein is Harrison Phillips. Neither of them are sexy positions, and he doesn't get the big sack numbers. He doesn't do these flashy things, but he eats up double teams. That little swim move against the run is ridiculous at times, like the way he's able to get off of zone blocks. If you saw him a couple times last year shut whole possessions down. I think it was like week 3. It might have even been the Philly game, but there was one set of downs where he blew up a run play, knocked down a pass, and then pushed the pocket on 3rd down, and then they went 3 and out. And I was like, that was entirely Harrison Phillips. That's going to go way too unsung. But great run stopper and just not a flashy guy that you tend to think about. But he's on a pretty good value contract for what he provides. And if we get a little bit more juice in that interior D line, I think suddenly you'll see him taking on less double teams. ESPN has a double team rate. It's all like tracking data, so it's a little bit, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But according to that, he was double teamed on run plays 52% of the time. It's something that you never really get enough credit for as a guy who's just eating up blocks, so other guys can kind of make the flashier plays. But outside of the trenches, my third is Mekhi Blackmon.
Yeah.
I think what he did as a rookie, was like a little under the radar, because I think a lot of us are still kind of fixated on the late season of Caleb Evans blunders, the crazy rise of Bynum and Metellus on the back end. Like a lot of that shine kind of went away from Blackmon, and he wasn't a world beater, but I think he was a very, very competent player in year one. And I think as a third rounder, they traded back 15 spots, and no corners went for those 15 picks, and they were able to snag Blackmon. I think looking back on that, that was a great selection and great process by Kwesi. And if Kyrie Jackson is kind of hits, and he is that big, lanky Flores cornerback who's able to stick these bigger receivers, some of these number ones, I think you'll see Blackman just kind of slide into that nickel outside corner role with Murphy moving inside, and just really excel in that kind of cornerback 2, cornerback 3 sort of role. And I don't know that we kind of as a collective really gave him his flowers for last season. I think it was a great rookie year.
Yeah, he got, let's see, kind of surpassed per Vikings fans by Ivan Pace mania, and then Jordan Addison's
exactly,
dazzling playmaking. Yeah, and I'm right there. I think I gave the exact same speech or something really similar a couple of weeks ago about Blackman, like his 71.8 PFF grade. We're just kind of like, oh yeah, but he got beat on those 2 plays, and it's like, really, that's what you're going to focus on for a rookie? Yeah. I want to stay on Bradbury. The way that I look at him. So follow me with this example. During the Mike Zimmer era, the offensive line on the whole was not very good. Down the stretch of the Zimmer era, whether it was PFF or ESPN, it usually ranked about 25th, 26th in pass protection and overall, which wasn't very good. Well, when Kevin O'Connell arrived in these last 2 seasons, that's been bumped up to about 12th or 13th per PFF and then ESPN. However, when you're watching a game last year and it's in the third quarter and Kirk gets sacked, there's a temptation to think, God, we never fucking fix this offensive line. I'm sick of this shit. Well, sacks are going to happen there, pal. That's how the sport works. So I think that's what we do with Bradbury is we have this bad first impression that because he was drafted in the first round, then he's not an all-pro or pro bowler, and like that he's just isn't very good. When in the backdrop, he is pretty good. But when the bad stuff happens, we're like, oh, same old Bradbury. This guy sucks. That's the parallel I have.
Yeah.
We uplift the bad, which is kind of a fan trait in general. But yeah, in based on what you said, the run blocking that is there, and he needs a big year this year because he's in a contract year.
Yeah, and it's kind of that's kind of the curse of the O lineman. He can have 58 badass reps in a game, and then with a block or 2, and he gets like lit up for it. So I think it's just there's the extreme sides of the spectrum that people want to be on one side or the other of, but Bradbury's kind of in that gray area more often than not. He excels at some things. He has some pretty significant drawbacks to his game at times, but on the whole, he's pretty smack dab average, and there's probably 15, 16 teams that would love to have Bradbury as their starting center.
I'm right on par with you guys about Bradbury. Like I saw people freaking out about that extension he signed, and I'm like, why? I don't love Bradbury. I don't hate him, but like I think the issue with him, like I agree. He's got these consistent reps, but just like when it's bad, it's bad. Like, and I'm not saying like I'd be fine if they gave Bradbury another extension, just because like you've got a solid O-line now, keep the continuity going. But like I think a lot of people, like you look at it's in big spots, like the 4th and 8. That everybody wants to get on Kirk Cousins for in the Giants game. Like Bradbury got, and it's against Dexter Lawrence, but Bradbury got destroyed and completely through that entire. Like I think he knocked Dalvin Cook like off his blocking assignment or his check and release or something, and I was like, gee, but it's just I think it gets magnified because you're confused. Like you have all these great reps, and then that happens, and you're just like. And I think he got thrown to the wolves a lot too. Ed Ingram's rookie year, especially because we know how bad Ed Ingram was his rookie year. Ingram he's a fine guard, and I think that would be on one of my top 3 underrated Vikings is Ed Ingram because he's been a fine guard at this point now, his second year. But Bradbury's been thrown to the wolves next to some bad guards, so I think you guys are spot on.
Well, when it was he and Ezra next to each other, it was a very, very much a where's the beef scenario where it's like, how are you going to flank a guy who has these, he has a tough time anchoring. You're going to have to like if it's a Dexter Lawrence, you've got to be able to send a double and have a strong guard on either side of him. And when it was Ezra's lanky ass, like it was just kind of a compounding factor there. So I think, the way they're building the O-line and the direction in which they're moving, like starting with the selection of Ingram, more of a powerful guard. I think, if they surround him with the right kind of guys, he'll be a lot more effective, if he doesn't have to anchor one-on-one against the Dexter. I don't know if you guys are basketball guys, but that kind of reminds me of like Rudy was getting cooked last night by the greatest player on the planet. Like it's like, yeah. Guys, I mean, he was doing all right. It's just, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think he gets a little too much crazy hate.
Yeah, the only other thing that follows Bradbury and will continue if he stays on the Vikings is where he was drafted, 18th in the 2019 NFL draft. When you draft a center there, that guy's got to be a Pro Bowler, because before that draft pick, the last center drafted that high was 1999. So we're talking 20 years, and that was Damian Woody, I believe. So that was the problem from the get-go. Yeah, if Bradbury wasn't going to be at least a Pro Bowler in year 2, then he was never going to be worth the 18th overall pick in that draft, even though the Vikings desperately needed offensive line help. All right, we got time for 2 more for John Brev. What do you got?
Yeah, and this is a kind of an all-encompassing. It can be surprise cut, surprise trade, surprise arrest. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Another team has had issues with that in recent weeks. But just anything. What is one bold summer prediction that you have for the Minnesota Vikings?
So I have a very bold wrinkle of it that I'll throw out. But so I think there's going to be a late camp or early preseason addition on the interior defensive line. And I know there's not a ton of mid-round picks laying around. I'm sure they could check under the couch cushions and figure something out. But I think the Vikes are in play for a guy like Jonathan Allen. Oh, wow. From Washington. They went and took Johnny Newton in the early second. He's coming off of a foot surgery, I think he's having on. He's had the same surgery on both feet now. But that's kind of a plan to move off of him. It's been a fire sale on that defensive line over the last 9-10 months or so with Sweat and Chase Young. Deron Payne just got the big extension. So Jonathan Allen, especially too when you consider like archetype, kind of more 1-for-1 with Johnny Newton than a Deron Payne would. So I think Jonathan Allen is probably on that chopping block, and I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Vikes alongside Harrison Phillips and whoever else moves around in there, Bullard, whatever. That would be the big splash. But, it could be more like when Patrick Peterson signed late, or just like some sort of some vet who we don't anticipate getting cut and gets cut, or just someone else who's sitting out there. Somebody who can keep Jerry Tillery from making the roster would be great. Just that type of player is enticing. But if we could get a better known commodity at that position. And if it's a superstar like John Allen, that'd be cool. A superstar might be a little liberal, but a really, really good defensive tackle has been on my wish list for the Vikes for 2 full seasons now. But that one would be, it's more of a hope, but that'll be my bold prediction, is going to get John Allen. And if it's not him, I think they get another body in the mix there anyway.
What would you have to dip into 2026 draft piggy bank for that?
I mean, yeah, screw it. I think, you probably depends on what he's going for. I mean, Sweat went for a 2. Allen's a little bit older. I think there's been some issues internally. I've heard random reports about it, but I don't know. Like, I don't think it's even close to a 2. You're probably dipping into 2026 if you can. Otherwise, you might have to make something else shake. But I think for something like a third and a fifth, or like maybe even get send like a third and a sixth, get a fifth back, like something like that. That it always ends up being less of a return than you think when you're trying to quantify the value of a player when vets are getting traded. So I don't think the cost would be particularly high. You'd have to make some things shake from a salary cap perspective if you are gonna go with an extension right away or whatever. But I don't know. That's one of the more intriguing guys who might be on the market. So that's where I'm going.
Brevin, earlier this week, before the little video came out, my bold summer prediction was Cam Akers will be back. And then he posted a workout video that was evidently in Egan. So yay for me. Brevin, do you have one on in mind?
I mean, I guess the bold one. We just talked up Garrett Bradbury for 10 minutes, but there's rumors about him being cut. So I guess that would be it. I don't know. I think it'll be a slightly. I would love to get Jonathan Allen. I actually really like that. I didn't think about it. I just ran the and of course it's not exact, but over the cap either way before or after June 1st, Washington is saving money on this year's cap, at least making that move. So that would be cool. But I guess for my prediction, I don't know, somebody Justin Jefferson's contract extension doesn't get announced this summer.
Oh wow!
Bold prediction. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen.
That's the spirit. What you should have done there. What you should have done there is had your bold prediction be Bradbury gets cut and then launch into a speech of everything that we just said, but the other side, like the guy's always getting like one of the big naysayer speeches on Twitter. Have it
exactly. Yeah.
All right, John. Before I forget, or in case I forget, back into the show, what is your role at Bite Size Sports?
Yeah, so we got a lot of shit going on over there. I host the NFL show that'll be kicking back up pretty soon, called Necessary Roughness. But then contribute in spots to our weekly basketball show, The Bounce. We do a podcast over there called Bite Size Vikes. That'll be picking back up as well as we start to get some more going on. And then on bitesizesports.com, I do some writing there as well. And I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything. But outside of that, on Bite Size Sports, we've got fights, UFC, or not UFC, MMA through our partnership with Carnage TV, as well as various other sports stuff. There's a little bit of soccer, a little bit of hockey, that kind of thing, but mostly football, basketball stuff over there.
Wonderful. All right, we'll have viewers check out Bite Size Sports where they can read your work and watch your video transmissions. All right, final thing for you, sir. We touched on this, at least the what if in the beginning of the show, but I want to know, based on what you know, assuming Sam Darnold is unlocked or at least has the best scenery he's ever had. We know J.J. McCarthy's in the house. We unexpectedly got Dallas Turner. We have enhanced defensive personnel. Put a win-loss record on these Vikings for 2024.
I got 10-7.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm there. It's so I think, I think something that goes like it gets overlooked, especially from like a national perspective when you're you're looking at trends of other teams, and like what's probably going to carry too much weight for a lot of people is the rookie quarterback situation, is the guy who saw ghosts situation, and I think that's going to be a little bit blown out of proportion, because what gets underestimated and what might not be something that a lot of people really recognize, like we would have watching the team so closely, is how competent, for the most part, the offense still was after Kirk went down. I mean, from the standpoint of just drawing up passing concepts and sequencing those, Kevin O'Connell's one of the best in the business. I mean, if Nick Mullins can light it up like that, I mean, you're thinking these guys will throw a couple less interceptions. You don't want too many 4-4 games. But I think that's going to be really underrated, is just how well Kevin O'Connell and his game planning can drive good offense. And then on the other side, how well Brian Flores and his game planning can drive good defense with better personnel than last year, with more losing Daniil, there's no player on this defense as good as Daniil Hunter. And that's huge as a pass rusher. But how diverse that personnel is on the defense now, how many little chess pieces Flores is going to have, Bob Tunyon's in the building until TJ High. I mean, this is going to be – it would have to be a really, really terrible quarterbacking season for this not to be a pretty good team, in my opinion. And, I feel like the floor, barring crazy injuries, barring a Jefferson holdout or trade to Cincinnati or whatever the hell people are talking about, it's like I feel like the floor is like 7 wins. And from there, it's kind of like, if they get hot, if they get rolling, if McCarthy picks it up and gets going, or Darnold takes to it, whoever it is, a combination of both, I think they can steer the ship. And I think the coaching staff is, one of the best in the league. And I think that continuity there too. This is the first time the Vikings have had offensive play callers and defensive play or an offensive play caller and a defensive play caller coming back for consecutive seasons since I think it's in 10 years, 11 years, something crazy like that. Wow. A long time. It might not be that long, but it's a significant amount of time. So I think continuity is going to be huge. We're going to have that same thing on the offensive line. It might not be all 5 starters, but you're going to plug a left guard in somewhere. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And there's a lot to be said for the culture of this team. And, a lot of that's me being caught up in the draft call videos. But, I just I like the vibe around the team. I like the guys they've brought in. And I think they're going to be ready to go. I think it's going to be a really, really competitive team.
Well, I've heard enough 17-0.
Yeah. I don't see a loss on the schedule. Just say that.
I think on the first part of your response, I think Kevin O'Connell just needs a quarterback who is at least serviceable throwing outside the numbers. I'm firmly convinced that's why Dobbs Mania died, because once he started to get figured out in terms of a scamperer, he couldn't throw outside the numbers at all, and that was his downfall. So I believe whether that's Darnold and that thing about seeing ghosts, I know that's going to follow him forever, but I really don't care. I mean, that's like a guy airballing a free throw as a rookie. Nobody cares, down the road. It happens. It's strange. And then on edge rushers, the Vikings lost Daniil Hunter, DJ Wanham, and then the 3 games worth of Marcus Davenport. But quietly, they got so much back. And Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Dallas Turner, Gabriel Murphy, the UDFA, and Jihad Ward. It really didn't feel like that was an option when we started to understand that Daniil Hunter could exit stage left. So kudos to them, because most would call that the second most important spot in football. So it's really cool for the first time in a long time. Even during the Zimmer era, we didn't have this type of edge rusher depth. It was always good because Zimmer was there. But,
wait. Are we saying that we shouldn't have freaked out when Daniil Hunter walked out on the first day of free agency and should have given time for everything to come together? That's crazy. Who would have thought?
We were right.
Yeah, and it felt like just icing on the cake to get Dallas Turner, because the edge rusher room was already decent. Like, it was like, all right, well, we're going to miss Daniil, and hopefully it, kind of is seamless. But then when they went and got Dallas Turner, it's like, well, man, they're cooking with gas. They know what they're doing here. They're getting serious about this. So I think we're all excited to see that.
And even just the swap, go ahead. Or even just the swap for from Jordan Hicks to Blake Cashman, just a little bit more range, a little bit more juice as a pass rusher. There's a lot of things Kirk's gone, Daniil's gone, but everything else at least slightly improved, I think, around the team. And I think that's going to at least even out.
Yeah, running back, at least an established veteran. Kicker, we think will be an improvement. They signed Shaq Griffin, drafted Kyrie Jackson. So everything but defensive tackle, they have said, you know what, we're going to get serious and we're going to set up this franchise. The competitive rebuild is kaput based on the way they have done business this offseason. All right, Brevin, you want to tell the guests what we got on tap for Tuesday night?
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention that we added this offseason through the draft was future Hall of Fame offensive lineman out of Oklahoma by way of Stanford, Walter Rouse.
I'm going with Rouse, but we'll figure it out.
I'm going with Rouse too. All right, cool. Fellow DMVer of mine, we will have him on Tuesday night. We're recording at 9:30, 10:30 Central.
Yeah, it should be up late Tuesday night, and then for people watching it, probably Wednesday.
Yep, but we will have him on Tuesday night and get to pick his brain about being a rookie in the NFL, I guess. I don't know. We haven't decided. I'll get the questions in.
Yep. And what we got to do, Brevin, is treat him right so that he comes back.
Oh, yeah.
We can be his spot. And that's the objective. All right, John, what's your Twitter handle?
Oh, I probably should have put that on here. It's at John B. Boyd 12.
Perfect. All right, so then we'll check out Bite Size Sports, and we do this habitually Saturday nights. During the regular season, it'll probably morph to Friday nights because I go to the home games and go to bed early on Saturday, which is really weird for me. But you hit our line whenever you want to come back on, and we can catch up on the state of the Vikings, okay?
I appreciate that, man.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Brev, we'll see you Tuesday night.
Later.
Take it easy.